You know where we're at. Rainy San Francisco. Here's what's going on. Snatches, snatch ladder. And I'm a gymnastics coach. What am I going to tell you? Well, there are many things I can tell you. And if you guys watched Kelly's mobility WOD last night or this morning when he posted it, you'll notice that he talked a lot about, hey, we need to focus on rotational stuff. So we're going to talk about rotational stuff in the shoulder. We're going to talk about hip position. But he also talked about mobilizing thoracic spine, upper back. Key thing is that when we get into these positions where we have to snatch for a lot of volume and the load gets heavier, the technique is what's going to carry us. So this is really a test that's going to showcase where the men are separated from the boys, right? Where the big women, strong women are separated from the little girls. And what's going to happen is that the first set, everything is very inclusive, everything's very easy. We can muscle snatch that thing, we can get through it. It's going to be a breeze. But the jump and weight, what it's going to do is going to showcase this mid-range place where there are a lot of people going to just muscle through it. Strength is what's going to carry them. But then for the third jump, when they go up to the heavy loads, if the technique is not there, we're going down. So that could be my case, but who knows? If we can maybe work on some skill, maybe we're able to jump to that next level and focus on having skill carry our strength. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Once again, Kelly, he focused on upper back, getting the thoracic spine mobile. He focused on shoulder position, get into a nice overhead position, and then find your angles, work on rotation, especially that internal rotation, because that's where we want that bar path to be. 2 or 3, sorry, hips. Get into a good piece for the hips. He did some flossing from the back and he did some lateral stuff just in case you have to go deep. When you get up to that 210 for the guys, you're full snatching it. So those are the things to think about from a mobility standpoint. Now, once we have that positional thing, we need to start focusing on the movement. The movement is key. The movement is where we need to get the nervous system primed. We need to get it firing. We need to get it fast. If you watched the video with Rich Froning and Dan last night, what you saw is that these guys, from rep 1 to the last one, especially Rich, he looks exactly the same. He started with a muscle snatch, he went to power snatch, and then full snatch at the end. But nothing changed. His setup was always very similar. The only thing that changed maybe were a little bit the angles, just to be able to get into more Olympic weightlifting, pure Olympic weightlifting style, and more kind of the CrossFit, bent over, more posterior chain dominant. So that being said, how are we going to do this from a gymnastics standpoint? Very simple. We're going to talk about position, and position number 1, everyone knows where it is. That's kind of standing tall, arms overhead, shoulders active up in the ears. Cool, that's great, but this is not where I'm going to receive a snatch. I'm going to receive it out here, and my shoulder's not going to be here. It's going to be back and down. So how do we get into that? Well, there are many ways of doing that. Once you have the mobility pieces taken care of, the first thing you're going to do is just start here. Arms out to the side. We're going to start mid-range. This is what we call mid-range. We're just going to start small circles. Simple stuff. We're going to start making it a little bit bigger until we get full range of motion. Arm circle. Don't make funny faces when you do this. That's key. Back and forth. I want to get a lot of rotational stuff. If, as you do this rotational stuff, you can start incorporating a little bit of extension in the thoracic spine, extension, and having everything going into global extension, we'll be able to add a little piece, and that looks like me jumping, pulling, and receiving. So that's what I'm looking at. Big extension, big rotation. Big extension, big rotation. That's gonna be your first piece, a little rotational stuff. Second one, whoop, PVC pipe. This is what happens. Once we have a barbell or we're holding on to something, the circuit is no longer open. Boom, we just close the circuit. Now, the game changes. Key thing here is as we do these shoulder passes is that we don't break as we go through this. Neck position has to be strong, rib cage has to be strong, butt has to be tight. So I want to just maintain, slippery stuff, good positioning as I go through this movement. Ideally, it's just the shoulder moving. You already incorporate a little bit of that thoracic extension when we're doing the circles. So here, just focus on getting rotation in the shoulders. Now, over here, what happens is that when we pull, come on over with me, when we pull and our arms have to be in this little scarecrow position, our shoulder requires a lot of internal rotation. A lot of you guys ended up damaged with those burpees because you may have started with your elbows in, the shoulder was in a pretty good packed position, but all of a sudden the elbows started coming out, and what happens? Gunk, drops forward, now we're screwed, we're blown out. So same thing happens here, but at a different level. Because of the angle of the position of that barbell, my hands have to be a little bit wider. I need to work on that internal rotation. But how we can emphasize internal rotation without damaging it or making sure that we're in a good position is we get on the bars, and what we're gonna do is elbows in, just hang at the bottom of your dip. When I say hang, I'm not hanging on the joint. I'm not ripping that capsule apart. I'm actually hanging on an active shoulder position where I'm just trying to open up the front portion of my shoulder. Key thing is, if you saw me from the front, you don't have to go to the front, but the elbows cannot cave out. I need the elbows in. I need the elbow on top of my wrist, that position. If I can just hang there for a little bit, maybe sets of 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that's enough just to open things up. Position is great, but you need movement. So if you were capable of holding that position, try to get back into it and see if you can add a little swinging. Just being able to swing back and forth here is starting to get into those deeper corners, and what's happening is we're just staying a little bit more active. Notice I'm not moving my head, I'm just trying to keep my head as still as possible. Elbows are kind of still, always on top of that wrist. If I can hit that, I'll be hitting those tighter corners, and the cool thing about it is that as I swing to the front, my elbow goes into a little extension, and it actually looks a little bit like this piece outside. So that's number 3 right there. We had shoulder passes, getting in there, a little bit of global extension. Number 2, shoulder passes. Number 3, we get on the bars. Here we go. Now we're gonna hit hips a little bit. If you see what we programmed yesterday on the gymnastics WOD, you saw that we did some bridge ups, and then we did, we did some bridges, and we did some pancake split. What you can do to add movement now is, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna hit the hips, is get into a straight body position. All I'm looking for is a little sit up into this little pike position. Doesn't have to be crazy, just a little bit of movement just to floss the back end. Notice that everything is movement based. It's not holding positions. We're just trying to get the body moving a little bit. Right now it's the morning, I'm stiff, it's getting crazy. So just a couple of sit-ups into pike position, into straddle position. If you want to tie in the back a little bit more, you can just do a little rocking. Get the toes to hip behind your head. This way, what's happening is we're getting into the thoracic spine a little bit more, and we're starting to also involve the hips. Yes, I am rounding here, no big deal, but that will give me more room to get into more extension later on. When we say extension, we're not saying overextension, we're saying global extension. Another thing you can do is tie in the hands. You rock back, hands down, shoulders, externally rotated, elbows in. That's what I'm looking for. Just that position is gonna give you a little room. And what's starting to happen here is, if you look at my hands, they go from this wide position to elbow in position. Wide position, elbow in position. When you think about snatching, what happens in that turnover is that we flip the elbow around, and that external rotation is what snaps the bar over our head, and we get into a better position. So just by doing a little bit of this, you're just priming that shoulder to start rotating. That rotation is key. So a couple of those will get you going. Once that's done, flip over. Push-up position. Drop into push-up, come out. Drop into push-up, come out. Key thing is that the elbow is in. If the elbow is in, your shoulder will be packed and down. It'll feel pretty good. And what it will do, it will just prep it so you can start going a little wider. Wider is here. Same thing, back and down. You will notice that if you drop fast, the shoulder's gonna wanna flinch. And guess what? That's the same effect of you going from the top, transitioning to the bottom. So a couple of just drop push-ups in a wide position is gonna get that shoulder prepped. A lot of people are gonna be smoked after this thing. So we need them to be primed and set up. Once you've done a little bit of the dropping from the push-up, you go over here, and we're gonna do the same thing with a row. Doesn't have to be crazy. We're not going nuts. All we're doing is getting to a good position, pulling up, dropping, and holding. Key thing is that I don't drop out of tension. I wanna be on tension the whole time. Drop, hold. Drop, hold. What that's guaranteeing is that when I'm snatching, and the bar's coming down, that I don't get into a crappy position. It's guaranteeing that I'm here, boom, back and down. I can tap and go. That's what we're guaranteeing, that the shoulders will be packed and down. Another thing, if you want to add a little value, you can go crazy. Back over here, handstand push-up, from knees on your elbow. Kick, push-up. Go a little higher, kick, push-up. Just that quick lock, guys, is going to give you shoulder activation. And then, widen the angle. This is freestyle. Here, tight, tight. And all we're doing is just maximizing that turnover. Last thing, getting the hips moving. Hollow body position, toes. Just a little V up. Once that's taken care of, over here, we load it up a little more, and we get to Kipp Toes To Bar. Notice I'm going straight leg, maximizing global extension to peak flexion. If you go through all those things, I'm breathing heavy already. You'll feel primed, you'll feel ready, and at least you got a little gymnastics in before you're snatching.